What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining me on another FCP Euro DIY. Today, we're going to be working on a 2018 Volkswagen Atlas. Today on the Atlas behind me, we are going to be covering how to service the Aisin 8-speed transmission. In front of us, we have one of the kits available on fcpro.com, which includes everything you should need to do that service. Aside from tools, of course, we have some transmission fluid, we have a new transmission filter, we have a fill plug, we have the drain plug and washer, and we have a new gasket for our pan. On the site, you will also notice there's additionals if you want to get specialty tools to fill the transmission, which we'll cover in a little bit, new hardware for the pan, which is reusable, as is the hardware for the filter. The interval for this is about 80,000 miles if you do a little bit of digging online. Realistically, we always recommend a 50,000 interval when it comes to transmissions, something like a regular automatic, not a DCT or PDK or DSG situation. So again, 50K is going to be our recommended interval. You're going to see we only have 4 liters of fluid here. Typically, we're only going to get about 3 out of this transmission or so. So 4 is going to be enough for the drain and fill. Now, if you're looking to do a flush in the transmission, then you're going to need a couple more liters to do that. I would recommend another 3 or 4 if you want to do a secondary one, either before or after you do the filter. But for the type of transmission this is and the type of service we're doing, this is going to be more than enough. We'll also measure what we take out just so you can see exactly how much we got out of ours. And that's all going to be dependent on the temperature of the trans as well, which we'll cover in a little bit. But before we get started on this 8-speed service, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need for this DIY. For this DIY, we're going to be using our main socket, if you will, is going to be a 10 mil socket and a 5mm hex. We have an extension and an adapter for our torque wrench here, 1/4 inch ratchet. I have a small rubber mallet. We'll probably be using this to remove the oil pan later on. Sometimes these can get stuck. You can probably also pry off of a part of the bell housing and the metal pan, but I prefer not to do that if possible. We have CTA 7414. This is going to be adapter for the transmission pump that we're going to be using today, or the fill pump, if you will, from CTA. Both of these will be linked in the video description below if you want to use these tools. I have a paint pen just to mark my hardware. We have the Autel today to read the temperature in the transmission, so we do the proper fill procedure. Brake clean is going to come in handy. We have an electric ratchet just to speed up the removal of the transmission pan hardware removal, and plenty of these babies to go around. Something needed but not pictured here as well is going to be a catch pan for your transmission fluid. Now we know what we're working with, let's go ahead and get started on this DIY. All right, my good people, the first thing you want to do before you start draining the transmission fluid is making sure that the temperature is in a range that it can be serviced in, meaning that you don't want the transmission to be too cold, you don't want it to be too hot, because that can affect how much fluid you drain out of it. So we're going to use our Autel. Again, we're using the MaxiCheck 808, and we're going to find out what our current temperature is at first. So let's find the Volkswagen selection. This can be a little bit different depending on what tool you're using, but at least this will walk you through the Autel if you're playing along at home. I'm going to do automatic selection, read the VIN, let this do the hard work for us. Then we'll go to diagnosis. I'm going to do control unit. And then we're going to look for the transmission electronics, that's selection number 2. And then we just want to get the live data feed from the transmission. So here's our live data. And we're looking for a temperature. So currently the transmission fluid temperature is at 41 degrees Celsius. So the range that this can be serviced and filled in is 35 to 45 degrees Celsius. We're right in the middle. It's going to be perfectly fine to service. So with that, let's get the car up in the air and start draining some transmission fluid. Underneath the Atlas, more than likely you're going to have a skid pan. This car has been missing it since we started working on it, so I'm going to leave you in blank with the hardware, but it's either going to be a 1/4 turns Phillip, a Torx, maybe an 8mm. Let me know in the comment section below. Moving forward though, once you have the pan removed, you have full access to your transmission. That's going to be over here, not the drain plug for the oil. We have a 5mm hex to pull, so let's go ahead and do that first. We have our catch pan situated. We're going to be measuring again the fluid that comes out, so we can give you a good measurement of what exactly comes out of this transmission. in service range. So far, just at initial looks, the fluid coming out actually looks pretty decent. This rig only has 61,000 miles or so. So not a whole lot. Definitely still within the interval window per Volkswagen, just a little bit over the 50K that we normally suggest for most transmissions. So we'll let this do its thing. You have to remember there's a tiny little tube in here, this fill tube that sits inside of the pan. That's a little plastic one you saw on the table. It's very tiny, so it's gonna take a little bit for this to drain. So we'll come back in a little bit and pick it up from there. All right, with the initial drain done, we have to remember we still have the standpipe in there. So there's still gonna be a lot more fluid in here. Same 5mm hex tool. We're gonna reach in there, make sure it heats itself nicely, and then back this baby up. I'm gonna ditch the ratchet because I'm gonna let that drain first, but it's not tight, so you can just do it by hand with the 5mm hex bit, but let's give that a second. There we go. So new one of these in the kits, no reason to reuse this. It is plastic still. It does get brittle over time, so we're gonna set that one to the side. We'll let this continue draining, and then we'll throw the plug, the old fill plug back in, or drain plug, fill plug, both. We'll throw the old plug back in so it doesn't keep dripping on us, and then we'll do the transmission pan hardware. At this point, it's pretty much as empty as we're gonna get it. I'm gonna give it a wipe and just use the old plug for a little bit, just to keep it from dripping all over us while we remove the hardware around the pan. So I'm just gonna make this finger tight. That should be more than fine for now. Now I still have my pan, my catch pan under here because I wanna catch whatever comes out of the pan when we tilt it out. Then we also wanna catch the small amount that's gonna come out when we pull the filter. We have a total of 9 10mm bolts all around the pan. So let's go ahead and zap those out now. I'm just gonna use the electric ratchet to speed it up a little bit. And we're gonna do it, not that we're reusing the gasket, but in a crisscross pattern. Okay, so this is pretty stuck on here. I put in quite a bit of force trying to pull it down. So I'm just gonna thread 2 back in just by hand, just a little bit, just to keep the pan from falling. We're gonna have to break it free from the transmission. You could use a small flathead and pry off of the standoff here in the case off of the pan. I'm gonna try a rubber mallet first so we don't have to pry off of anything, and then go from there. Quite a bit more fluid, so you wanna keep your catch pan handy. We're also gonna measure everything again that we drain out, except for like these little drips. We'll take this pan over to the workbench, but we have 2 magnets in here that usually pick up any of the material over time. We're gonna go ahead and clean those off and inspect them. But for now, let me set this to the side and we'll move on to our filter removal. We have a total of 3 10mm bolts holding the transmission filter in place as well. All right, we're over at the workbench. We're gonna prep our pan for reinstallation while everything drips back there. Just lift up this old gasket. I recommend hanging onto the gasket for just a little bit. Now, you can reuse it in some cases. Personally, they come with the kit. I wouldn't ever bother. But if for some reason you just had to pop this off, maybe you're following along because you want to check something, or you just did the service and you're missing something, you can reuse them as long as they're in okay shape. But the reason I say hang on to it is you can see these have spacers in them. This kind of helps set the torque value for the hardware when you put everything together. These pop out, especially on the new gaskets that haven't been shrunken and expanded and shrunken and expanded, so it's easy to misplace them. Hang on to it in case you need them when you're reassembling everything, and maybe you're a little unorganized, I don't know. Just a tip. We have 2 magnets in here that we're gonna pull out and just give them a good wipe down, get all the debris off of them, all the clutch material. All right, our magnets are good. You know, clean them as best as you can. They are magnets, so anything that was magnetized to them, still gonna wanna be magnetized to them, so that's why I'm using a little bit of brake clean. Now I'm just going to scrape out the rest of the fluid in here with a shop towel into our catch pan real quick, and then I'll come back and show you how to put the new magnets back on. All right, our pan is nice and clean, ready to rock and roll. This is what it should look like. You'll notice inside the pan there's two little indents or two little spots that guide where the magnet should go. So make sure you put your magnets there once you pop them back in. And then we have our new gasket. Only goes on one way. It is a keyed fitting. So there's a channel on the gasket that rides the lip of the pan. And then we can just pop the spacers back in if they fall out. They'll bottom out against the pan and you'll be good to rock. All right, one more thing to address while I have you here is our friends over at Aisin, call it Aisin and Volkswagen, ditching this because I have all my spacers already, do not provide a part number for the O-ring that you are going to be seeing on the neck of your filter. So typically these are going to be in okay shape for at least the first couple transmission services, but you can find them in something like a universal O-ring kit, which I have over here. This is one that I pulled off just to compare. Now, I don't love the look of this because it's a little bit fatter than it needs to be. So if for some reason you're in a pinch, you can find something that works in the universal O-ring kit. We're going to keep working at finding a suitable replacement on the site that can adapt to this filter neck. But for what it's worth, it measures at just under 28 millimeters where the O-ring sits. So as soon as we find something that can service that, we'll link it into the video card and it'll be available on the website for you. So for now, we'll just transfer this O-ring over. Again, it's in perfectly fine shape still, but it is something we want to be able to provide you. So we'll continue working hard on that. So at this one, we have a pan that's ready to rock. We have an oil filter with its O-ring transferred over that's ready to be installed. So let's head back to the transmission. We're going to give everything a wipe down, give the sealing surface a bit of a wipe down with some brake clean, and we'll get these babies in. And then for those of you wondering exactly how much fluid we drained, we're going to do that real quick now. This holds a total of 2 quarts or 2 liters, depending on what side we use. So we'll go with the liter side for now, since that's what we have here on the table. And we'll start draining everything in the pan. You can also just take a look at the color of this fluid. Again, not horrible, 61,000 miles, but not great. So you definitely don't want to go with the whole lifetime fluid, lifetime sealed slogan that the manufacturers sell you, because that is not the case. So just under 3 liters, my good people. So definitely have more than enough in the kit. And again, we pretty much caught everything we could from the pan, the plug, and the filter. Almost 2.5 liters is what came out. So again, we have 4 liters in the kit. So when we fill our transmission fill tool, I'm going to throw 3 liters in there. That'll give us some that's going to spill out once we pull the plug out. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but then we'll still have a little bit left over to top off if we need. So with that, now let's head back to the car, put the pan and filter on, and go from there. All right, now we're going to feed our filter back in. Again, we transferred over the O-ring, which we already covered. That's going to help hold this in place a bit. Give it just a little bit of a wiggle, make sure there's some fluid on it. And that'll hold our filter in place so that we can get our 3 10mm bolts started by hand. I'm just going to use the socket to drive them up. So I'm covered in fluid, but definitely do them all by hand. All right, these get torqued down to 11 Newton meters. So we'll grab our torque wrench. If you don't have a torque wrench, that's not a whole lot of torque. Just barely snug them up and you're going to be good to go. Beautiful. Now, even though we've wiped it down quite a bit, we'll give the sealing surface of our pan one more wipe. I'm going to grab 2 10mm bolts and we'll just get one on each side started. All right, let's get the rest of these started in by hand, and then we're going to torque them up in a crisscross pattern. All These 9 10mm bolts get torqued down to 7 Newton meters. So let's go ahead and set our torque wrench. All right. Again, there's no specific pattern from Volkswagen. They just want you to do it in a crisscross pattern. Same goes for Aisin. If you look up that info, they just call for a crisscross pattern. So with that, we are ready to fill this baby back up, at least the first step of our fill procedure. So we're gonna take out that old plug. I'm still gonna hang on to it. So I'm gonna use it one more time as we do the fill procedure. But for now, let's get our filling pump over here, get our 3 liters of fluid in it, and we'll do the initial fill. We're back under the Atlas. I'm gonna pull out our old drain plug that I was using. We're still gonna keep using it for one more little bit. Just be mindful, there could be a little bit of fluid in there, just from whatever is stripped, depending on how long you've waited since you put the pan on. But we're gonna take our new fill pipe and get that one started by hand. Remember, this one goes in pretty deep. Only do it by hand. It is still plastic. It's gonna thread in for quite a bit. And once it snugs up gently by hand, that's as good as it needs to get. Now, we're gonna take our fill adapter and thread that one in by hand until it bottoms out. Again, this is CTA 7414 for those of you that skipped through the tools. All right. Now we're gonna hook up our pump. Now with our pump filled up, we have 3 liters worth of fluid in it. Again, we only drained about 2.5, but 3 is gonna be more than enough to fill it. Once we get the 3 in there, we'll pull the tool out and we're just gonna plug this with our finger and reuse the old drain plug to just snug it up before we hop in the car and cycle it through the gears and all that good stuff. So again, right now, engine's still off. We're gonna fill it up and then we'll take you through the steps in just a moment. So just remember, this is going through a very tiny tube, the plastic tube that we just threaded in a moment ago. So it's not gonna fill it up in 2 seconds. Same thing goes for when you're doing the draining. Once we get the car in the temp that we need it to, again, between 35 and 45 degrees Celsius, and we cycle all the gears, we're gonna come back down here, pull the drain plug, and again, because I know we're overfilling it, we're gonna let it drip until it's done dripping. If for some reason you have nothing coming out while the engine's still running, then that means that you're underfilled, so you need to shut off the vehicle and repeat the steps that we're about to cover in just a little bit. All right, so that's more than enough. I'm gonna shut that off right there. Just release the pressure here so don't make a mess. Now we're gonna work on threading off this tool without covering ourselves in ATF fluid. But it's basically gonna start dripping out, so I'm gonna try to plug this with my finger as quickly as I can. Catch pan is situated, there we go. And now let's just get this one started by hand. Just so we can monitor and make sure that while this is getting the temp and all that good stuff, we're not actually losing fluid from anywhere else. We're just gonna gently snug this up, super gentle. All right, with that, let's hop inside the car once more. We'll get the autel going. We'll show you what to do next. We are back in the Atlas. We have our live data back up. You can see our transmission fluid is at 30 degrees Celsius right now. So the first thing we're gonna do is start the vehicle. We're gonna press the brakes. We're gonna put the e-brake on if we're concerned with that. Does not hurt to do so. And we're gonna shift the car through each of the gears. We're gonna hold each one at 10 seconds. If you wanna do 15 seconds, 20 seconds at each one, you're not gonna hurt anything. Just be mindful of the temp that you're at. We're at a great temp right now where we have to wait another 5 degrees before we're in the proper fill range, if you will. As soon as we hit 35 degrees Celsius, and at this point we will have gone through all our gear shifting, we're gonna get back underneath the car, pull the drain plug / fill plug, and we're gonna let it drip until it drips no more. Again, we know we overfilled it, but that's okay. If for some reason you have no fluid coming out, meaning you underfilled it, and again, we're leaving the vehicle running in park, we'll go through this as we do it, you're gonna wanna stop, turn off the vehicle, and repeat this process once more. So again, we're gonna start the vehicle, shift it through all the gears for 10 seconds, leave it in park, wait till we get to 35 degrees Celsius, leave it running in park, hop underneath, and pull that plug until our transmission stops dripping. If you are not dripping at all, repeat the steps, turn off the vehicle first. Let's do it.
Five minutes later.
All right, we're nearing 34 degrees Celsius. By the time I get underneath the car, we'll be at 35. Again, leaving it running in the park position. All right, we're back under the Atlas. We're gonna pull our fill plug now. We should see some fluid come out. Again, just be mindful that there's always gonna be a little bit in the fill pipe. So give it its time, let it come to a full drain, and then we can throw the new plug back in. While that drains, we're gonna prep our new plug. We got our crush washer situated. As soon as it comes to a dribble, we'll thread in the new plug and then we'll torque it up properly. All right, let's get our fill plug back in. We're just gonna snug it up gently by hand first. This is our new one now. And brake clean this baby up. And we're gonna torque it to 25 Newton meters. And that is going to conclude this DIY for today. If you still have your pan, be sure to throw that back on. Otherwise, all you have left to do is go for a drive. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, leave those in the comment section below. And if you like this DIY and you'd like to see more like them, please consider subscribing. We make new ones all the time. As always, thank you so much for watching. Catch you on the next one.